What up, y'all? Welcome back to the show. Today I'm here with some very special human beings and individuals. My lady Beth,
Hello.
Beth Ann, and Jenny Patton and Eric Patton.
Hello.
We
Hello,
are
hello.
at Dogwood Dell Park. And today we are going to be dropping in about conscious relationship, conscious loving, have a little roundtable discussion with the primary focus on your guys' experience with that, because you guys have been on a journey together, a beautiful, expansive journey up to this point, interacting and working and growing with each other in a very dynamic way. So first and foremost, would love for you guys to say what's up real quick and say your name and what you do professionally.
Yeah.
And we'll go from there.
Cool. Yeah, I'll start. I'm Eric Patton, one and only. And I am a relationship coach. I help people with 3 relationships. First and foremost is the relationship with yourself, how you speak to yourself, how you treat yourself, how you interact with yourself internally. And then the next one you would guess is with other people, primarily in your close personal relationships, which I would call intimate relationships. Learning how to communicate with other people, how to express your wants and needs, and then from there, how you have your relationships with the world, with everybody else that are outside of your intimate circle. And I'm fortunate enough to get to coach with my partner in love and life and everything in between, Jenny Patton.
Well, hello.
Hello.
I am the other half of Inspire Change Collective. And we've been on this amazing journey together. What's been really cool is the fruition of the company started 4 years ago, and it actually really started back when we met. We flirted with all these ideas of things that we wanted to do, and it's really cool to see on this other side 10 plus years later how much of what we talked about at just outside of high school has actually become a reality in its own way, sometimes with that conscious awareness, and sometimes on the other side of it we're like, wait, we talked about this however long ago, and here we are. So
Abracadabra.
happy to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for being here with us and taking the time. So a quote that comes to mind that I would love to get your guys' opinion on and your direct experience and how it showed up in your relationship is that, and I was trying to find yesterday who the quote was from, and I heard it on a JP Sears podcast. But essentially, when we get into intimate relationship, we trigger each other inevitably so that we can discover our undiscovered selves, if you choose that perspective consciously. And I thought that was very illuminating, because we're going to push each other's buttons when we're close. When we get past the honeymoon phase and we really see what's beneath the hood, the truth of what's occurring inside is going to come forward. So I would love to hear your perspective on that quote, how it showed up in your relationship, and what parts of yourselves have you discovered that perhaps maybe you wouldn't have discovered without the relationship. What's come through, or what are some of the main aspects of self that have emerged through your love?
That's a beautiful question.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to be able to hear that and say, yes, absolutely. When we first started dating, we were in high school. I was a senior, he was a junior, and we were unaware of the way that our early experiences were impacting us in that moment. The amount of challenges and hurts and pains that we went through and caused for ourselves and each other, to be on the other side of it now and be able to reflect on those experiences from a place of love and understanding is an example of the growth that we've gotten to share, because having gone through some of those hurts now there's so many times where, you can sit and say, like, I wish I wouldn't have done that. And going through that opened up a lot for us to be able to learn about our own experiences and how they impacted us, and being able to go through these experiences together. I remember, especially early on, the dynamic that we had. There were so many things about, his invitations to express, and my natural way of being, or so I thought, to shut down. And it felt very much conflicting because I wanted to open up and I wanted to share more about myself with him. But there was like something that I physically felt like my throat close up. Internally, I was screaming. I wanted him to know more about me, but it felt so unsafe to do so. And it wasn't until we learned about what was causing that lack of safety that things started to shed. And slowly we started to open up. And through that process, I learned more about myself. And because I learned more about myself, I was able to share that with him.
Yeah, absolutely. And we often tell people that there is no plant medicine, no therapy. There is nothing else that will compare to relationships when it comes to growth as an individual. You said it, pushing buttons. It'll happen whether it's subconsciously or consciously sometimes. And I think for us, because we started our relationship journey in high school, like we were just kids. The level of awareness as to how our behavior was being impacted or implicated by our childhoods that we grew up by, it wasn't there. It was non-existent. And so for us, we have been numerous versions of ourselves, and some of those versions we had a lot of fun together. Some of those versions we didn't. Some of those versions, it was not so fun. And there was a lot of pain and a lot of suffering. And you're right. I love that you said that right now. Like there were times that were like, well, dang, I wish I wouldn't have done that. And now I have this deep level of reverence for the things that we went through because it got us here. And we obviously needed to go through those things. And had we not have gone through them, we may have continued to self-sabotage later on in life, or sabotage each other, manipulate the circumstances in a negative way. So I don't believe inherently that manipulation is negative. I think it can be positive or negative. So what we do coaching wise is we manipulate words so that people can shift their perspective on something. So manipulation doesn't have to be negative, but oftentimes in life that's what we experience it as, is negative, right? Someone wanting us to do something that we don't want to do, right? And we definitely went through plenty of phases in our lives where we were triggering the hell out of each other, and more importantly, not knowing what to do with that, and taking things really personally, being defensive about everything. And it took a lot of work, and I would say more than anything, choosing to do this together, making a conscious decision to say, you know what, this matters. This matters. So we're going to do this together, however hard this gets, whatever road this goes down, we're going to do it. We're going to do it together. And as soon as we made that choice, that's when everything opened up.
That's beautiful.
And since then it's been one beautiful moment after the other, including some of the ones that at one point we might have been like, this sucks. And now we're like, this is exactly what we needed. What is this trying to teach me?
That constant like death and rebirth process, and being able to welcome in the new versions of each other. On the topic of like our parents, being our first models of love, essentially, and how to do everything, what would you say your parents or families modeled for you in the realm of co-commitment?
Yeah. Okay, so I'll start. So I didn't have my parents were never together at any point. I shouldn't say at any point. It was a short period of time. And then I came into existence, and they were not able to take care of me. So my father was a drug addict, went to jail for attempted murder when I was 2.
Wow.
I was forcibly removed from my mom's care when I was 2 by the Department of Children and Family Services just outside of LA. And at that time period, it was hard to get removed from your parents' house. In LA, they want to keep the families together. They don't want to remove anybody. So it takes a lot to get removed over there. And so I grew up with my grandmother. I had really one relationship that I saw, which was my uncle. And I wasn't around them often, but it was enough. And they were in we weren't calling toxic relationships toxic back in the 90s, but if we did, it would have been a toxic relationship. And so everything that, I learned about relationships came from movies, rom-coms, Disney, which, we don't got to go too far into that rabbit hole, but let's just say that's not an accurate portrayal of relationships, especially at that time period. And so I didn't really have models to go after. And so for me, it was, this is what I think I'm supposed to do. I think I'm supposed to show up like this. And, as you can imagine, didn't exactly work out so well. And so in terms of family, my grandma was a single mom. My grandfather died when I was really young as well. And so it was just me and her. And so I think in many ways, my ability to connect with that feminine side of me was really easy because I was around women most of my life, and older women too. So the level of respect was usually there because I had to be. And so, but I still didn't know how to translate that into relationships, because obviously talking to an old lady isn't the same thing as talking to someone
It's a little bit
in your age
different,
range, a little bit different, And so I had to learn through experience, which is really goes back to your previous question, which is triggering each other and learning how to do stuff. That's how we did it. And learned how to do it well by learning how to do it really bad.
Yep.
What
an opportunity.
That's what it came down to for me.
That made me think of no, that's not it.
That's not it. Yeah.
So for me, I also grew up in a single parent household, and my mom and dad, they split up while I was in my mom's belly. And so growing up, what's interesting is I remember our family unit was my mom, my older brother, and myself. We had a lot of interactions with my aunt and uncle, her siblings, and their partners. And so as much time as my aunt and uncle could, they would take my brother and I so that we could, experience life in different ways, help my mom out. And, I didn't know growing up that my life was different than other people. I just, this was my life. I didn't know that other people, I guess there was this aspect of what you don't know. And what I had was a lot of love in the way that I had it, My mom did her best. And I sit back now and think holy moly, you're 30-something raising two little us, and I'm just how did you do it? I have so much respect and love for her at this point to know, the things that she went through on her own. And, I remember specifically, she didn't bring guys around us. There was one time that she had a gay best friend, and he was like, Jenny, what would you say if your mom and I got married? And I started crying. I was like, no, that's not, I don't want that, and I had certain interactions with my dad where he would come and, he would come, and all I remember were the promises that he made. I'm going to be around. I know how much I missed out on, and I want to be here for you now. And it was the promises of, what do you need? What can I give you? And as soon as there was some level of, okay, I suppose you're saying that this is going to be true. And so I remember this one time in particular, I was like, fine, I'll give. I need a computer for school. And we were supposed to meet at like the Best Buy for the Latino community. It's called the Curacao. And my mom and I were going to go meet him there. And we get there, and then she gets a message. Sorry, I can't come. And I remember the feeling of like, okay, that's the last time you're going to get me like that. You know, like that I thought that this was the moment, and here we are. It's fine. And I remember that I specifically remember that like hardening up. Like, don't show mom that you're disappointed. Mm-hmm. And so that was one of those things of like, okay, well, I can't trust what you say. Mm-hmm. People are going to make promises to you, and no matter what, even if they say that they care about you, they're not going to show up. They're going to leave. And there was that background of like, what's wrong with me that this can't be, that you can't follow through with what you say that you are going to do. And on the other side of that, I've got my older brother who he had, his own challenges growing up without a dad as well, right? And I remember my mom, like I said, she did her best, and there were moments of, I'm going to have a teaching moment for him, and also this is for you, so listen. Make sure that you're listening, right? Make sure that you're listening. And any kind of like sex talk that she gave to him, it was like, you listen too. And so there were these just different dynamics that I look back on now that I see how they influenced the way that I showed up. So yeah, it was definitely one of those things that I can see it all happened in the way that it was meant to now, but in the moment it was definitely confusing at times.
Yeah. Yeah. So it seems like you both had different like relationships with the masculine in that way, as being absent or not being able to show up, or, in some cases being abusive. How did that like show up for you coming together?
Yeah, I would say for me personally, I had a very disjointed view of the masculine. And so I went hard the other direction, which is like the people that I were seeing that were, in my view, masculine were all, we also, remember, we grew up in LA, gangster rap time. So it was, what's side for everything, And so I tried to be like really hard up front. And I also knew that my mom was involved with gang members. My dad was a gang member. And so like it felt like that was what I was supposed to act like. And it was never really me. I'm actually a really like soft person and very sensitive. And, I have my moments, obviously, that I can, when I need to be strong in my masculine and leave the feminine, then yeah, I obviously can, but I prefer to be in a balanced state. But I didn't understand that at that time. So I went hard the other direction, and nothing's going to bother me. I don't cry. This doesn't, whatever happens, I don't care. I'll beat your ass if I have to. Like, it doesn't matter. And to other
lifetime right
yeah,
there.
And it was
what I picked up from you.
Yeah, exactly.
You and your energy now.
Yeah, and it's so different, right? And it's so funny for me because people see me now and they're like, "Wow, you just have such a balanced energy." Yeah. And it's just it's still funny to me to hear it because I had to work to understand and develop the masculine. It didn't make sense to me at all. As far as I was concerned, the masculine was about running because that was the only thing I had seen from masculine. Or it was, in my case, from my uncle, that was really the only man as a young child that I was involved with. He was a police officer and very drill sergeant-esque. And so, he was throwing fastballs at me in the backyard, like 70-mile fastballs when I was like 8 years old.
A child, right?
And like you shouldn't be doing that to an 8-year-old, And he was a very, very hard man. So that was the only kind I saw. And then I was lucky enough to, my grandma put me in Catholic Big Brothers Big Sisters. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the program. It still exists. Now it's called Big Brothers Big Sisters, not Catholic Big Brothers. But back then it was, right? And so I was matched with, I would call him a friend of ours now, a friend of mine. But at the time, he was a mentor. And he is a very soft-spoken computer engineer dude. Very soft-spoken. So it was like kind of confusing for me. Like, wait, what is happening right now? Because I'm catching one on this side and one on this side. And I'm like, I don't even know where the middle ground is. I don't even know what being a man is.
Which one's right?
Yeah. And so I definitely struggled for a long time. With that notion of I'm also a Cancer.
I was gonna ask.
Yeah, so that's my
that
so I have Cancer as my sun sign, and then Pisces as my moon. So like I'm incredibly sensitive and emotional, and I didn't like that at all. So when you don't like feeling emotional, you get rageful and anger. So anger was the only thing that I was expressing most of the time because I didn't feel comfortable expressing anything else. And in terms of our relationship, I think with her, she was one of the only people that I felt comfortable being myself and showing her. And I think for her, there were times too, again, back in this, we were really young, and she didn't necessarily know what to do with that herself because I wanted to talk about things and I wanted to you don't feel good, or we're upset, we're in an argument right now, let's find a middle ground. And she struggled to communicate that herself, but then that triggered the abandonment wound in me. Why don't you want to talk to me right now? What's wrong with me? Well, obviously there's something wrong with me. Everybody doesn't like me. All the women in my life have left me for the most part, except for my grandma. So it was triggering. We talked, this is right back to the beginning. What are the things that are triggering accidentally that we didn't mean to do, but were happening? And so in terms of how that component showed up in the relationship for us, it was varied. It depended on the moment. We also really enjoyed going to music festivals all the time since we were 18. They were raves back then, though. They weren't called music festivals.
What were they called?
They were called raves.
Raves, yep. I remember.
Right?
Looking
and so,
at these.
yep, rave life, right? Exactly.
It,
yeah. And so we loved going to them, and that was a fun time for me too, because I think that was the first time I experienced being able to be masculine, protect my friends, but also be soft because everybody's really loving and come here, give me a hug. Random strangers are like, hey, I love you, give me a hug. I'm like, hey, I love you too. You got 15 numbers in your phone afterwards. I don't know who this person is the next morning, And so that was fun for me, and that was the first place where I was able to experience that balance, but I didn't realize it obviously in the moment. It was just fun times. And then the more we did more work on ourselves, the more I started noticing it, and the more I had to choose, how do I want to show up? And if I want to break the line that has happened with my family, the ancestral drama, I would say, that's just been unfolding, it was a choice for it to end with me. And I chose to do that, and that's hard, really hard to do, to even see it and let alone choose to shift it. And so there's a lot of ways it showed up as well, but I would say that's the best way for me to describe it.
The rainbow sheep.
Yeah.
The rainbow sheep. I love it. Now, for me, I would say it was more so in the sense of receiving love.
Yeah.
Being okay with that, feeling safe with it. I had, as far as male figures in my life, it was my mom's brother, and then my Uncle Joe, and then her sister's husband, so my Uncle Gilbert. They were the two men in my life that were the steady, the constant, as well as my grandpa. Now, so the three of them, I saw them as strong male figures, and they were all very different. And while they definitely, showed up for me and they were there for me to support as much as they can, I also noticed that, with my brother, you have that sense of well, he's the one that doesn't have his dad and he's the guy. And I was able to recognize that sense of it felt like for me growing up, it was oh, Jenny's doing good in school. Jenny's, she's keeping up with her grades, and Eric needs more help. My brother's name is Eric also. And so there was this sense of you can go and have someone that is there for you, but you're there was almost this sense of but I don't want to be a burden to say that I need anything. And so that was something that felt the ability to express for me was where the challenge was. And then on the other side, if I was given the opportunity to express, then it was like, wait, is this like an authentic ask? Like, how do I know if I'm okay to share what I need? Like, so then there was the masking of like, oh no, I'm good, I'm okay, all is well. And so that's where like the happy, like I don't want to add on to anyone's challenges, so I'm just gonna like sit with what I need, what I think everyone else needs.
I feel like that's a common, like, feminine wound is to be like almost like sacrificial in how you show up. And like, I resonate with what you're saying in regards to knowing what is okay or necessary to communicate. So.
Yeah.
This is very intriguing and synchronistic that we all had absent fathers. Her father was there, but in a way he wasn't, and I can let you elaborate on that if you feel called to going into it. But my father personally, he was a police officer that was killed in the line of duty 2 months before I was born. So I'm in the womb with my womb mate, my twin sister Kayla, and that male mentor, that masculine role model, out of the picture before I'm even out the womb. And just reflecting on familial dynamics and how it's impacted our relationships, which I feel is definitely very important to explore and express about and reflect upon for everyone. So if you're listening, get out a notebook. If anything sticks out and you see some intersections or some things you can relate to, relation station, take notes and take a look at your dynamic with your families and in terms of and recognize our stories and how they could potentially serve you. But grew up without a father, and my mother did an amazing job, incredible nurturer, nurturing to her own demise, and there was a complete absence of discipline in the household. And through that, I became a rascal and I got into some trouble, and it wasn't anything where I was causing harm to people or things along those lines, but I did damage to my body by partying and getting into drugs. And since there was no reprimanding, I wasn't able to course correct until I hit a few rock bottoms. But reflecting on our relationship and how that dynamic of me growing up in a single parent household impacted me was that my mother's what she knew was to soothe instantly and not to really let me sort through my own shit. It was tending to me emotionally and coddling me. So that dynamic has showed up in our relationship, where I was programmed to be a kid that got what he wanted when he wanted. So I can reflect on so many instances where that has played out, where even the other day here in Richmond, we were going back to the Airbnb and they were doing a podcast and she wasn't answering. I was like, oh my God, we're not going to be able to get in. And it really wasn't a big deal at all, because there wasn't really a rush to be anywhere. But just because I couldn't have it exactly the way I wanted, my inner child was pissed. And that programming was showing up, and it definitely shows up in a lot more nuanced ways now, though. And our relationship illuminates that codependent dynamic for me and illuminates that wound. And there's the choice point and the opportunity for me to rewire that and be like, oh, I'm responsible for this. This is occurring within me, and I get to claim that and look at it and bring it to the light and transform it into something that helps me grow into a better man, regulate myself, and just become a better individual for it. So I would love to hear from you guys. How would you define, conscious loving or co-commitment, or those two terms, and then codependency? And if you could provide some examples of how it showed up in your life and how you've navigated it. So Do what you will with that. Is there anything there that you'd like to add, or anything you want to throw in terms of things that have been illuminated for you through our relationship?
Yeah, I'm excited to hear your answer to that question. My mom and dad got divorced when I was in like 5th grade. He was very mentally ill and he traveled a lot. So like my beginning perception of the masculine was that he's going to leave. So I feel like it's interesting. We all kind of have this like little core abandonment wound. And yeah, my mom was a people pleaser in every way, like sacrificial, like giving beyond her own like capacity to give. So when it shows up that, you know, there's needs that may be a little like louder than my own, I tended, working on it, to surrender more to what, you know, the masculine's needs were, or people pleasing on my front. I like to tell people I'm a recovering people pleaser. But yeah, I would also love to know what you guys define as co-commitment, and I have the book right here. Yeah, conscious loving
and codependence as well. And if you could provide some examples of how that showed up, if any come to mind.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I think for me, the similar to what you just mentioned right now, which is that sense of taking things personally when it doesn't go your way. That was a big deal for me personally, and that was that would trigger the abandonment wound. You know, you're not answering the call, you don't want to hang out with me. We actually just recently talked about this, like you want to go out to hang out with your girlfriends at the club, or you want to go do this, and it's like, wait, what? You know, you want to go do what? And fine. And I, you know, for me it was one of those things where you know, I wasn't really like okay with, but I also didn't want to lose her. So I didn't want to turn it into a, no, I'm not okay with you doing this. It was a fine, like, do whatever you want to go do. And like, I'll see you later type of thing. And I would mask it by saying, well, you know, she's coming back to me type of thing, which I think a lot of men do. And I would say the biggest thing when we were in that codependency one is not necessarily telling the truth about how you feel. And even if you do, it's not the whole truth.
Yeah.
It's partial truth.
You're withholding, which is a codependent
Exactly.
dynamic.
Absolutely. And I think that's a core component for people that are in codependent, which is a lack of the complete truth.
The microscopic
truth. And it's mini truths in there. And then even the way that I would portray it, it was a, you know, I don't want to mess with you, but like, you know, I'm kind of sort of maybe feeling like this, you know, soft talk acknowledge that we know now. Back then we didn't, you know. And I would say the biggest thing for us now is that we have a very clear vision for where we want to go. And it involves her being her own individual person outside of me being my own individual person outside of her, and we choose to walk the path together to get to this place. That's what conscious relationships are, in my opinion. We don't need to overcomplicate them. I think that people really like to overcomplicate things, and we're human. That's what we do. We like overcomplicating things, and it doesn't need to be particularly complicated. So I think that being clear about wants and needs, being courageous enough to ask for it and not feel bad about it. And then I think letting people in. That's a big deal, especially for us, right? Like you have that wound and it's like, what's going to happen if I let them in? I don't really want to. You're like brace for impact, you know? And the best thing you could possibly do is let them in and let them see. I do think a big fear for me was if I let her see all this, she's going to run for the hills. She's going to run for the hills. And I know you felt like that too. If I get all the way in there, you're not going to want to be with me. So I have to like withhold pieces of who I am, or I have to portray myself in a particular way so that you like me. And that is a false relationship. You're not in a relationship when you do that. You're you're with a version, right? And it really sucks for both people because like one, you can't actually be who you are because now you're having to project this version of yourself that they know. And that takes a lot of work. a lot of work to do that all the time. It's really lying. That's really what it is.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult to do that over the long period of time. And quite frankly, eventually it'll all come out. And so for me, you know, we're at this point now that it's like, okay, this is how I'm feeling. This is where I'm at right now. This is what's going on. It's not all about you. Most of it's about me, but I need to let you know this so that way we can move forward.
Yeah.
That felt better, you know?
Absolutely.
And in the past it was
I don't want to hurt your feelings.
I don't want to hurt your feelings, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Go
was
ahead, you
a
can go
big
from there.
I was going to say that was a big thing for me. It was like I heard recently in like the past few years the aspect of like people pleasing, it is manipulation in the bad way, because you want to uphold a version of you that you want them to see you as the nice person, right? And like being nice means that you don't tell the full truth because you might hurt their feelings, but that's actually not being kind. It's not being true. And so I know that I definitely withheld certain aspects because I thought that if I told the truth around fill in the blank, then I would hurt his feelings, and then it would cause this big old blow up, and then, you know, whatever, you know, you what if the bad things, right? It's gonna turn bad, so might as well hold it in. Another aspect too, when you're asking about like the whole codependency, I remember I took this social psychology class when I went back to finish my bachelor's, and she asked about the difference between being independent, codependent, and interdependent, right? And she asked, which one is like better? Raise your hand if you think it's better to be independent. Raise your hand if you think it's better to be codependent versus interdependent. I remember the thing that she really emphasized in that class is that here in the US, we think that it's best to be independent.
Yeah.
Right? But the truth is, it's best to be interdependent. It's two individual people coming together for that shared meaning. And when you're coming from two independent places, it's like, I'm a strong, independent woman. I don't need you. And here's the thing is, like, when you're coming from that place of you have a way out, there's this sense of, well, if this doesn't work out, then I can go do something else.
There's an eject button.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Yep.
And I think having that idea keeps that door open for, well, I can run away. And that was one of the things that I did often. It was like, oh, I don't want to be arguing. So shut down, and then I'd run away. I'd go to another room. I need some space. What I didn't realize was that was creating that triggering that abandonment wound. And also I was repeating a pattern, right? What I was seeing was usually with my mom and my brother, them getting into a fight, it being a blow up, and then me just sitting there watching it and being like, quiet, not knowing what to do, seeing them go away from each other, and then coming back as if nothing happened. I didn't realize I was repeating the thing, and then, coming back to be able to create our own dynamic. Then that was where we became more intentional about the way that we interacted with each other, being able to express, I'm actually really angry right now, or I'm feeling this way, and how can we work through this together? Yes. The co-commitment part, that I would say that even through marriage, when we got married, I thought it was the next thing to do, right? Like, we had been together for so long. He asked us, like, of course I was excited. And there was definitely that part of me that was like, the common thing that I heard was, I don't want to be a bad wife. I don't even know how to be a wife. What does this even mean? I was freaking out internally, but then there was also the part of me that was like, yes, we're getting married, right? Even through that initial part of marriage, I didn't know what it meant to be married. Going through and actually talking about some of these challenges that were coming up in our dynamic initially, that's when we created the actual most intentional relationship. It wasn't just when we got married. That was definitely a beautiful ceremony that we got to share together. And it was after coming together and saying, whoa, these are the things that are still coming up. That's when the true commitment came to say, this is how we're choosing to love each other. This is how I want to be loved. This is how you want to be loved. Here's how I can show up for you, for us. And this is what I need for myself. You know, finally being able to actually get to have him witness the like, what I felt, oh my gosh, the ugliest cries, you know, and being like wanting to hide, you know, and then him seeing me and he didn't run. I was the one that was running from me, you know, and this came years into, we're about to come up on our 6-year wedding anniversary, but he's seen like the darkest and hardest parts of me in the most recent years, you know, and that's because the wedding it's the beginning. It opens up so much, right? One of the things that we've talked about is like, are people getting married for the wedding or for the marriage? What comes after the wedding? That's when things.
That's when it gets real.
That's when it's really there for you know. And again, divorce is a way out. And recognize, yes, there are absolutely reasons for some people that the separation is a necessary component, and what is up to us to create this conscious, loving relationship.
Yeah. So we actually we were actually just talking about this like concept like for divorce, right? And we were watching what the bleep is going on. The like original thing that Joe Dispenza got famous for, right? Like the OG one back in the day, right? And we were watching it, and they had a scene in there talking about when Columbus first landed here, that the Native Americans couldn't see the ships because they had no perception of a ship.
Whoa.
So they couldn't see them on the horizon.
Whoa.
They'd never seen a ship before, so they couldn't see it, literally, right? And so it took a shaman, right, who would go to the water every day and then saw it and thought he saw something.
He noticed the change.
He noticed the change in the water, not the actual ship. He just noticed that there were waves in this one spot. I was like, what is this? And after time, eventually saw the ship, right? Then tells everybody else. Then they can see the ship because now they have a concept of, look at this spot. Look, there's something there, right? And so we were talking about, as it relates to relationships, is what if we chose to come together in this very healthy way. You know your needs, I know my needs. We're going to communicate them to each other. What if we didn't have a concept of separation at all? If it didn't exist at all, then how would we treat our relationship? How would we show up? I know it's getting a little cold, huh? How would we show up in our relationship? And how would we act if there was no eject button? Like, we were getting on this plane and this plane is going, period. And it's not coming down at any point. So then how would you show up, right? And I think if more people started thinking about it like that, like, I'm not going to get in the plane until I'm ready to get into the plane. And the plane would be the relationship, right? Together, your interdependent relationship where we're clear about where we're going, what's going to happen up there, what we're going to do to handle things, how we want to handle it, and what if there was no eject button? How would we act? And that, for me, is a big deal because I think so many people go into relationships like, well, if it doesn't work out, we'll just break up.
Easy
Peasy. No big deal. You know, like, I'll just get back on a dating app or I'll just get back on this thing. And I think today we're living in a world where the problem is options. You have a million options. And the reality is you really don't have that many options, y'all. Like, you might think you have options, but like, it's not as abundant as you might think. Or as like some of these app builders want you to think, you know. And so once we had that conversation, it was really illuminating to me because I was already thinking that, but I didn't realize that, like, conceptually. Like, what if I couldn't conceive of this at all? Then how would I act? And for me, that's a big deal because, you know, our talks that we've had have been, well, like, I want to be with you forever. Like, you know, and what do we need to do to make that happen? Instead of, I don't like this, what do I need to do to get out of this? Right? Because that's how so many people are looking at when they don't like things. Well, and oftentimes I think for me personally, I was thinking, well, how do I change you? How do I change you to show up in the way that I want, instead of how do I change me to show up in the way that we want, that suits both of us. And I think that takes a lot of awareness, takes a lot of courage. Man, it takes a lot of courage. And courage requires vulnerability. You can't be courageous without vulnerability, you know? And so I think through that lens, that allowed us to step into a whole other level of relationships, which has now led to us being like, okay, this is what we do. I can talk to a couple. I can get you on the same page. I can get you not only on the same page, in the same book. So many people want to be on the same page, but if you're in one book and she's in another book, does it really matter if you're on the same page? Doesn't matter at all. You know, you got to be in the same book, going in the same place, you know? And I think for us, that was a difference maker for us. Choice, right? Like choosing to do this together, you know? And so we went off on a tangent. Did we answer your question?
Yeah.
I don't even remember
beautiful.
the question.
Interdependence
We just
is
kept
the
going.
new paradigm of relationship.
Yeah, reflecting on many things. I mean, co-commitment and what that's been like for you guys stepping into that, which is so fascinating because there's obviously been a massive awakening with where you started in terms of what's been mirrored back to you as what relationship is. So first and foremost, I just want to acknowledge that and say how beautiful it is and how important it is to share your guys' experience, because there's so many people that are, I mean, we all want relationship, whether you admit it to yourself or not. It's just how do we go about that, and how do we commit to each other and go in the direction we want and have the freedom we want, and how do we liberate ourselves, and how do we meet those undiscovered aspects of ourselves in a way that is practical and makes sense, and that works, and that isn't overcomplicated. Because like you said, it can be simple, and I feel the embodiment. It feels so good to connect with a couple that's doing the work and has faced the demons, gone in there into the arena and gotten bloody, sweaty, and cried, and been through the darkness and the depths, and actually done the fire walks, and that's so cool. And I know there's been resources to help you, but it's purely been like an evolution also through just direct experience and commitment to each other, and really taking radical responsibility, facing your own shit, and meeting each other in it. So just reflecting on co-commitment and what that's looked like for me, and how healing it's been. One of the most beautiful things for me being in a co-committed relationship, which this is the most conscious relationship I've been in, where I felt the most free, and where I felt I could bring the darkest corners of what's within me to you and share it, and we can look at it together. And I don't face judgment. You don't project your own, whatever it may be, attachments or onto me. And if it does happen, that's fine too. We work through that, and it can be a little messy. But being able to consciously reveal things within me that I thought I wasn't acceptable for, and really exploring the edges of what that can be like. Fringe sexual experiences, or for example, I acted in a way that I knew was out of alignment. I had masturbated to an ex-girlfriend, and I was like, this needs to be brought up, and this is a reflection of my distorted relationship with sex, which we've had a lot of conversations about, or what it's came to be just based off of my experience and learning along the way. Never got the birds and bees talk, lots of stumbling, falling, and like, how does this work? And, figuring out my own way and developing tendencies that were toxic with my relationship to sex. So I was able to bring that to you, and there was no judgment. I felt completely safe, and we were able to address it. And it's something I'm, actively working on coming into better alignment with, just due to, watching so much porn in my youth and, you know, all these things, and like having shame around my relationship to sex and what I've explored sexually and all these different things. And as I've been able to illuminate that in this relationship and be seen in it, and she's like, I'm here, babe, you know, I love you and you're perfect and it's totally fine. I'm just like, oh my God, I can now liberate some of my energy, and I can have more creativity because of it, because there's not a part of me that's rejecting an aspect of me. So that's what's so beautiful about relationship, is it shows us so much about ourselves, and it can lead us to so much more freedom and more creative expression, and really just the most potentiated version of ourselves, right? Like you said, plant medicines, fucking whatever, it ain't gonna touch intimate relationship and what can come forward with true closeness. And I reflect on where we're at as a society in terms of what the status quo is, and there's grown-ass men with their women that are hiding things from their women, and it's like, dude, isn't what you want to be as close as possible to the person you're basically signing up to be with for life? Don't you want to be fully known? That's what I want, and everybody wants that, I would say, because of how much more love shows up within when that occurs. So yeah, that was just a bit of reflection on my experience with, you know, and I feel so fortunate to have been able to connect it with different individuals along the path, including, you know, of course, Beth, and just have these different elements of myself be awakened, and therefore love myself more, and therefore be able to charge ahead in the direction that I want. It's just the ultimate fuel. So it's so important that, and perfect, this will lead me into a great question for you guys. And, you know, you displayed so much beautiful wisdom in what you just shared before, but y'all are moving into relationship coaching. So if you guys are open to it, would love to hear, you know, what your process is going to look like in terms of working with people, if you feel called to sharing about that. And it could be a good time to plug what it is that's, you know, you're going to be offering, and how it is that you can help people that are in relationship to come to a place of conscious loving and really experience all the benefits of what that brings into one's life.
Absolutely. First off, let me say too, thank you for sharing that, because I think a lot of men really struggle with shame, and they don't want to share things because they are judging themselves so harshly that there's no possible way my partner isn't going to judge me at the same level. But the truth is we're always our harshest critic, always. And I think that a lot of men out there can learn from people like me and you who are being honest, and in a very heart-centered but also grounded way of like, this happened, and I'm expressing something that I'm feeling internally, and I'm feeling shame, guilt, whatever comes up from it, whatever emotions, and I'm comfortable expressing that. I'm not just comfortable expressing, because most men, I think, for me personally, are very comfortable expressing anger, frustration. I watched football for the first time this season the other day. 10 minutes, and my body was like, so like, oh my God, so tense from it. And I used to love football. And so I love using sports as an example for men, because like, if you think men aren't emotional, go to a sports bar on a Sunday afternoon. Go to a sports bar and just watch. And just watch all these dudes whose week is ruined by other grown men doing what they do. Okay? Men are incredibly emotional, and a lot of times they just don't want to admit it. So thank you for sharing something very vulnerable and intimate for yourself, and then also for you being able to like sit there and let him be in his energy of like, he's working through this. This has less to do with you and more to do with him, and that's hard for women as well, especially in a situation like that.
I'd love to like also share on that note, like, you know, it comes up, and of course I'm open to receive, and then there's like the part of me that has emotions around it, and it's like, what is for me to process on my own time and in my own way, what, you know, what's come up from maybe my inner child or the parts of me that are like fearful of abandonment, and then on the other side of that, how can I now open even more to communicating further and continuing to open that space of safe communication as things arise.
Yeah, it's a big deal for sure. I really want to touch on that because I felt like that was a really good point that you're bringing up, and now that's a coaching moment too. So someone that's listening, like this is really important for you to express things. I would say especially those things that are deep dark corners that like you don't want to go look at. That's where shame lives. That's where it lives, and it will grow in the dark.
That's where the golden opportunity is.
Exactly. Yeah, and it will recognizing that it feeds on certain things, right? And I know there's a quote somewhere that it's like shame feeds on guilt, secrecy, and like
silence.
Silence, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so like as long as you keep it hidden, it's going to keep growing. And so to be able to feel so comfortable to even in the discomfort to share, hey, there's this thing that happened, and to be received openly, there's this sense of like, oh, right. And on the other side of it, and you touched on it earlier, is like the desire to fix and to like, to change, but to be able to sit back, witness, and accept, right? Acceptance of the person that's in front of you, going through as they go through their own changes, is like, that's part of what it is that we're bringing within our coaching, our new coaching model, is like, how can you be with the person? Our company is called Inspire Change Collective. Change is the constant, right? But how someone changes is up to them. So to be able to witness someone else's change, accept their growth as it happens on their own, while also knowing that you too are changing. There's that saying like, you've changed, and the little butterfly, it's like, yeah, we're supposed to, right? Like now the there's like that what's the double-edged sword, if you will, in the change process, is sometimes thinking that the person that you fell in love with is no longer like as they go through their change, like, what if I don't like, and this is something that someone has recently told me, is like, well, what if I don't like the person that they've changed into? What if we're no longer in that alignment? Well, all that tells me is that you've not gotten to meet the person through the change. You're still talking to the person in the version that you met them. But are you the same person? I've been, when we're working with people, they're going through their constant change. Are you introducing yourself to, in all of these changes that you meet? Are you introducing that new self to the person that you care about? That's really what this is about, is like meeting yourself. The core component of this is that us starts with you. So the more that you're able to meet yourself, the more you can share that with the person that you care about, right? And so that's really like a core component of what we want to bring to this program. And as we connect with people, is like sharing these aspects that like your love is your journey, and how you get there is going to be so different from the movies and from your best friend or the person that you see on social media, but that there are these different aspects that we get to learn about how to be able to love each other more intentionally, to turn towards each other instead of and recognize when you have the desire to run away and instead choose to turn toward, because running away sometimes is the easy thing, right? Turning towards each other can be the hard thing. And even if that means I'm very upset right now, but I'm here with you. I'm here. Right. And to breathe together, right. To be able to see each other in those deep, dark moments. Like, that's really what we've learned with each other. And that has helped us to get to where we are, and to be in a van in this teeny tiny space for for a year and have people turn to us and say, wow, you must really like each other. It's like, that's the point.
Yeah, and on that same note too, that was one of the things that we both believe as a foundational components of relationships, is that love blooms from like. I have to like who you are, right? And a lot of times people will hide behind love, and they'll say, well, I love you, I love you, I love you, but I don't like who you're being. And they may not even say, I don't like how you're being. And the reality is that, like, she's my best friend. Like, we're friends first, right? And if she's my friend before she's my wife, before she's my business partner, before all those things, then I have to treat her as such. And then if I'm looking at her like that, then most of the time, if you're in good relationships with your friends, you support their growth. You want to learn about their growth. You want to get to know the new version of them, not just like hang on to this past version of them. And oftentimes what I notice in relationships is that people feel very attached to old versions, and then they are threatened by the other person's growth. Yeah. And I would say you don't need to be so afraid of that. Actually, here's the fun part. Most people think the honeymoon phase only happens once, right? But if you're getting to grow all the time, you get numerous honeymoon phases all the time, because you're constantly getting to know each other again. It's like, I'm growing. Hey, here's this thing that I'm doing. And then she can be like, oh, that's really cool. Where'd you come up with that? Awesome. Well, this is what I was doing. I was doing this meditation. I had this thing. It was awesome. You know, it's really cool. And she's like, wow, that's amazing. And then she goes through and I'm like, cool. Well, what was that like for you? Okay, now we can help each other integrate it. And now we're a new person now. So then as we're new people, we're getting to know each other at a deeper level. So the further she can grow and peel back layers on her own, and I can support her, then the more I get to know her and I get to know different versions of her. So then we get another honeymoon phase instead of just one. You know, and that's my whole thing. Is like, how can we make this whole thing one massive honeymoon phase instead of it being 1 6-month period? You know, and I think we do that by accepting that you're going to change, right? Like, it's gonna happen. Don't run from it. Like, lean into it, and enjoy the process. And I think so many couples too, especially when you're together for a long time, we make the mistake of thinking, well, I already know everything about them. I know their favorite band because like 7 years ago they liked this band. Like, what? You never listen to new music in 7 years? What are you talking about? I have a new favorite song like every other month, you know? And it's fun to like learn, like, oh, I found this new thing. I didn't think I would really like this style of music, but I really like it. And it says something about me that I like this. You know, I'm trying this new thing over here and I don't know if I'm going to like it, but I want to try it. And I'm finding out new stuff about me through that. And as I do that, she gets to know me better, and then we get to go in this round, rinse and repeat process. You know? So there's a practical component that we teach, which is in line with Enlifted, which is language. You know, what's the story you're telling yourself about relationships? And you know, the story for me was I'm too much. I'm too much for people. I have too much muchness. You know, and I had to really deal with that. Like, no, I'm not too much for anybody, certainly not the people that care about me. And as soon as I could do that, then I could allow myself to do more stuff. So what's the story you're telling? What's the language you're using to describe both your relationship with self, but also your relationship with your intimate partners? And that's the practical component. And then I think there's the more metaphysical component as well, which is when you have one person, right, manifesting one thing, right, it happens, right? We don't got to go too detailed into manifestation.
Please do.
But like, okay, cool. So like, for me personally, right, here's where I think everyone gets caught up in is the how, when you don't need to get caught up in the journey. Don't worry about how you're going to get there. Just focus on being clear about the end. Where are we going at the end of all of this? And I think if I can do that on my own, that's incredibly powerful when I'm in alignment. Right? When my body, and I think another component of this too is people get caught up in the mind. They think the mind is working against them when actually it's your body that's working against you. Your body doesn't want you to forget anything that's happened to you. It holds memories inside of it all over. So you don't need to convince your mind. Your mind's on your side. It wants you to move forward. It looks at things logically, rationally. It's like, okay, cool. Well, we don't want to do that. Let's not do the thing that brings us pain. Let's do the thing that brings us joy. Your body's like, no. Remember that one time? in band camp in 5th grade when this thing happened, and you're like, holy shit, that did happen, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's the body that needs to be convinced to be safe. And then the mind will follow suit, and then the soul will just come forward from there, right? And so what I think is really beautiful about relationships, and this is why you guys heard us in our workshop saying your relationship is your superpower, right? Because now if she has one on her own, I have one on my own, and ours is interconnected with each other, now we are doubling down on that. And now the universe is sending everything it can to make it happen here and now. And I think
you're like amplifying it.
And it's literally like, cool, let's connect it to this big ass speaker and let's just boom and let's make this happen, you know? And I think it's one of those things that this is another important part of letting people in. Like, let them in to see your vision. Let them in to see your dream. And so that way you can make it happen, you know, together. And it's so much better. Like, listen, life is so much better with other people, right? We live in this culture where everyone's like, no, I want to be disconnected. I'm introverted. Like, I would ask anybody that's introverted, when you get around people you like, are you introverted?
What happens?
Nope. You start talking up a storm. Because that's not how we work. We're not introverted or extroverted. It depends on who you're around. And then you speak when you find people that are at your same frequency and resonate with each other, you know? And so if you can take that same concept as with us, so now if we are on the same frequency and we're rolling together, the universe is like, cool, I got you. Let's just put you on this little chariot right here and let's just go boom. Go, you know? Yeah, exactly. And it's fun. It's fun to have relationships like that, you know?
I was curious if you guys have any like significant synchronicities to share as you manifest your individual and collective. The
It's right
van,
there.
of course.
It's right there. Wait, did we tell you? I don't know if we told you guys. Did we tell them the story about how we got the van?
Can our listeners hear it?
Okay, yes. Okay, so we were in, so the first L1 of Enlifted, right? They make you do goals, right, for 2 years out. So I put on my L1 in 2020, van life for a year.
Van life,
right?
baby.
And we got a picture of a van, and we put it in the bathroom. We put it in our office.
And then on my vision board.
And then on your vision board, right? And so, and then we moved to Austin. So it didn't happen that first year, and we moved to Austin. I got a job opportunity to move to Austin. We moved to Austin. Job opportunity, only was there for 3 weeks. I got fired. Only time in my life I've ever been fired from a job.
Congratulations.
And it was because I was like crushing too much, basically. Like ridiculous. The most absurd thing you've ever heard. That's a whole other story. We could spend an hour on that. Yeah. Okay. So that happens. And at that same time, we're finishing up level 3 of Enlifted, right? And one of the things on there is when we were talking, it was, again, another more advanced goal setting session, and one of the things we wrote on there was Inspire Change headquarters, right? So at the time we were like, I don't know, like I just feel like we're gonna have an HQ, like and we were thinking like a storefront, like whether it's like a style of gym or like something that people can go to, like a brick and mortar style of thing, right? So it's October 4th, 2021. And so we're like, okay, we're just going to put it down for a year. We're just going to pick a date. So we pick October 4th, 2022, right? And we put it in our calendar and we go about our year. We do a bunch of stuff in Austin. Austin was great. And then at the end of the year, or at the end of our time in Austin, which was about like August, is when we realized like we don't really want to stay here that much longer. Rent was increasing to an absurd number. And we also, like, Austin was a fun town. Like, we love Austin, but it didn't really feel like home. It didn't seem like somewhere we wanted to like put down roots. It just felt like a really fun place to be, right? And so then we're like, so what do we do? It's August. Our lease is up in September. And so we're like, okay, I think we can figure out a van. I think so. I'm not positive, but like, let's figure it out. So we go. Bunch of stuff happens. We think we weren't going to get it because the first van we looked at was overpriced, had some physical damage on the outside, and then it didn't even really have the layout we wanted. It was cute, but it didn't have the layout we wanted. And so I'm like, okay, we only got a week left on our...
Before we got to be out of the apartment.
So like,
wow.
It's hitting the fan right now.
Pressure's
Hitting the
on.
fan. And then magically, of course, abracadabra, the van we had put together that I had only seen 2 with this layout that we wanted, magically appears on a website. Much better price within our price range. we already had the cash. We had the funds to do it. And so I called the lady, and the lady had 2 people that she had seen prior. They had tried to like lowball her even more of her very well priced offer. It had 25,000 miles or 20,000 miles on it. I'm sorry. And so she was like, listen, like if you want to do this, like I had 2 people bail on me. You have to send me a $2,000 non-refundable deposit right now. And I was like, cool. Send me some like videos, right? And I want to see you turn the engine to make sure the engine works. And then show me all the stuff, and then cool, we'll go. So the previous 2 people had already done the Carfax, and they had already sent it into independent mechanics to take a look at it. So she sends me those 2 that I would have paid for anyways. Nice. Right? So it's already done. We do it. And I'm like, cool, I got it. Here's the 2,000. Send it to her right away. And she was like, wait, what? And I was like, yeah, I got it. Let's do it right now. Like, I'm going to fly out in 2 days. And she's like a little like, what just happened right now too? So I fly out to Columbus. I get it. And she's like, I think she's a little nervous too because we're young and, you know, it's not cheap to get one and we're paying in cash. I'm like, cool, let's go to the bank. Let's do this. We go to the bank, cut her a cashier's check, do it. I drive it back home. I get back home 2 days later. I was super excited that first day, so I drove like 18 hours. I had like 3 nitro cold brews, like bad idea. Don't ever do that. But I did it. And I listened to so much music, right? And so I was bumping the whole way over there, right? And so we get back, packed everything up in the van. We get moving. The day we leave is October 4th, 2022. And as we're bouncing out from Austin, we get the notification on our phone, Google Calendars, Inspire Change HQ has opened up. And we look around and we're like, holy shit, this is Inspire Change HQ right now. This is crazy that it would happen like that because we totally forgot about it. We totally forgot about it. We put it in there and just forgot, literally. And it popped up and we were like, this was meant to be. Like, this is one of those, like, it was always going to happen like this. And this is the like letting go process of things. Like you don't have to know how you're going to get to the thing you want to get to. You just need to know that's where I'm going and believe that that's where we're going.
Plant the flag,
boom,
write it down.
Yep, exactly. And that was definitely a spooky one. We called Mark right away. We were like, dude, you have to hear this story. Right? So we tell him, and he's like, yeah, of course it would happen like that, you know? Like, yeah. And so we've had many moments like that throughout being in the van as well. Lots of things that were like, can't make it up. Like, that's the beauty of the universe is like when you like look too hard, you can't see stuff. And when you let go, you see everything, you know? And there's been plenty of moments for us like that. But I would say that was the wild one for sure. Where we both got the notification at the same time on our phones as we're driving away. And it was like, wow, that just happened right now.
Did you scream?
We had a moment.
Yeah, we definitely did. Yeah, definitely did. Definitely cried and you know, it was a beautiful thing. Cried like a man.
That's such a great shift. Not to go into that, but to land this plane, anything else about what y'all are moving into with relational coaching that you want to share? And then any last words that you want to share with the people? Whatever's on top of heart, and then let's plug social medias and we will finish up.
Cool.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
So this is something that came up for us upon beginning our relationship, but polarity and like being able to keep passion alive when you're like double tripling as a like business partner, best friend, roommates, all of the things. How do you keep like romance and passion a priority and alive in your relationship?
Well, you know what's interesting is growing up, when we were talking about the aspect of like being able to receive love and how that plays out now, I definitely was not a very like touchy-feely person growing up. I was like, ugh, you know, and he wanted to cuddle. And so at first I was like,
I'm a cuddler.
What is this, you know? But as I got safer in my body and recognized the safety within us, I realized that was actually something that I craved. You know, it's something that I wanted. And
she's also a cuddler.
Yeah, right. And now being able to express my wants and needs, my desires, and prioritize that. That's really the big thing, is like being able to prioritize our connection. It's something that at first I couldn't wrap my head around. Like, do I have to, like, some people like put it on a calendar, like, what? But being able to actually let things flow and show up from a place of knowing my needs, my cycle, and letting him in to witness and be a part of that. And so now we've actually got a pretty solid base of like understanding how that monthly cycle does influence my desires, my wants, my needs, and then also tending to like what are his wants and needs, and being able to communicate, express those things, and again from a place of like curiosity, of compassion, and knowing that like we may not always be on the same level, but like can we accommodate for some of those things? Can we little like hand holding, touch, physical touch, like sitting there, cuddles, and whatever it is that feels good in the moment.
Yeah, I would agree. And then I think for me too, leaning more into my masculine is initiating things. And like I know what she likes, so it's my responsibility to go make those things happen, and go try to find ways to be romantic. I don't believe that people aren't romantic. I don't believe that men aren't romantic. I think we all are. They just struggle with like, well, what are my guy friends gonna say if I like really like going on dates and doing cute stuff? Like they're gonna look at you like you're awesome because they struggle with that, and maybe they'll be inspired by you. I don't know. Right? And so I definitely lean into that a lot more now, and just figure out ways to do stuff. I know the stuff she likes, so like we stop at museums. When we were over here, we did a dance class at a Cuban restaurant together, so we went to dinner and then did a dance class. And we also like because we're in the van, like picnics are like a regular occurrence for us. And while at a previous time that would have been a date, this is a regular way that we eat food. So much of those things are just part of our regular life, to now where I don't have to think about it. It's just like part of it, lots of hugs, lots of I would say intimacy without the need to go into sex. That's the big thing.
Essential.
A lot, which I think a lot of people could use that with. And so to wrap it up, we really help. I would say two kinds of people, which is one, couples who want to create closeness and who want to share things with each other that maybe they don't have the language or the know-how to feel comfortable doing it, and they need someone else to be the catalyst for them to just show them how to do it. So that's one group. But I would also say we also are really good at helping people who want to be in relationships and want to work on themselves too in order to show up better for whenever the time is for relationships. And we don't discriminate against anybody, so like we're open to helping anybody at any time, and that's why we called our company Inspire Changes. We want to be an inspiration so that people can be inspired to go change their own lives. And I'm not going to do it for you, but I will show you how we did it, and I will teach you the ways in which we created this very beautiful, loving relationship. And some of those things will work. Some of them might not work, but I can show you that how it worked for us. And I teach people things based on what I've done. So I don't teach anybody anything that I don't personally do all the time. And I think that works a lot for people. And it's been a wonderful conversation. So super glad we got to meet you guys too at the lake house
a year ago,
about right now, actually. A year ago, and so it was wonderful. I had heard about you obviously because I had seen the chain, and I was like, dang, that would be cool to have a jeweler that I know. That would be awesome. And so now I do, and so it's been a pleasure to get to know you guys and connect and meet other conscious couples too that are working through things just like we're working through things. So thank you guys for having us on. Thank you for sharing your love and light with us and allowing us to do the same with you guys.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys. You guys are my first couples Reiki session and last couples Reiki session. And I remember being able to feel like the energy flow from your hearts because you were laying next to each other, like flowing like almost like circular in between your bodies.
That is cool.
Awesome.
That was our first experience.
That was our first set too. Yeah. And last couples one.
Right.
Very magical.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank
How
you
can
guys.
people reach you?
Yes. So my personal Instagram tag is Evolve with Eric. Our company one is Inspire Change Co. And
mine's Joyful Jenny.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
It's true. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Thanks all the listeners that are tuning in. If you want to reach out to Jenny and Eric, you know where to find them. You know where to find Beth and I. This was the Relation Station. If you want to support the show, please leave a review. That would be helpful. And please share with anyone that you also think would find value in this. So
even your mom and dad. That could be edgy.
Yeah. And aside from working a professional relationship, we're here as human beings that want to support other human beings. Yep. So if you're going through a hard time, if you're in some serious darkness and you don't know what to do and you feel lost, we're all here. We'd love to, lend an ear and do what we can for you. So we appreciate you tuning in. This is the Relation Station, and we'll see y'all next time. Smooches.
Thank you.
Adios.